blueprint to launch your podcast. I'm Sidney-Smith, and I'm joined here, of course, with my co-host and my co-author, Steve Orr. How's it going, Steve?
Ray, I say this every time. It's always a pleasure. I'm hanging in.
Today is a special episode. We are recording live, but you will be getting this at the end of the podcast series. So it'll be kind of a bonus episode at the end, and that's because we have a special guest with us, and so we wanted to be able to figure that all out. But just so you know, you're going to be hearing this podcast in the podcast feed kind of at the end. But what we're really going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about basically the podcasting through a small business lens, not really a technical one. We've been in the technical pieces of the episodes, but what we wanted to do is kind of step back almost to chapter one and talk this through. And we're going to do that with actually the person who wrote our foreword. And so today we have the pleasure of having Rieva Lesonsky here with us. She's the founder of Small Business Currents and smallbusinesscurrents.com. It's a content company focused on small businesses and entrepreneurship. So she really knows her stuff when it comes to this. She's a nationally renowned speaker, a best-selling author, and an award-winning journalist, as well as really an authority on entrepreneurship. She was the longtime editor. She was the longtime editorial director of Entrepreneur Magazine. And so with that, I'm going to bring Rieva up to the stage with us. How's it going? Rieva?
It's going pretty well. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic. We're really pleased to have you. It's been many years since I've had a chance to talk with you in real time. So this is really lovely to have this time with you today. And so as I kind of said in the lead up here, I wanted us to really talk through some of the issues that small businesses are dealing with in reality and talking it through really the podcasting lens, and kind of the opposite side, right? So we're talking about podcasting, talking it through the small business lens and vice versa. And so I thought we would start with just some basics in terms of where do you feel like small businesses are struggling right now? Where do you feel like they are dealing with the biggest issues of finding attention and trust in this particular marketplace?
It's a very difficult time for small businesses right now. Tariffs have just killed a lot of retailers. And I don't mean they're out of business, but some of them are in danger of going out of business. So they're looking hard for new customers. And it's hard in this environment. There were just these numbers released that it was a good holiday season, let's say, for retailers. But when you dig beneath the numbers, they said that the upper income people really were the ones spending it, and middle and lower income people were holding on to their money a little bit more. And so how do you as a business owner attract those people to your store, to your services, to whatever business you're doing when they're concerned about money? It's a topsy-turvy economic environment. That's the best way I can describe it. And that's when you really need your marketing to work. Because really, how else are you going to do it?
So can you get into that a little bit more about, you mentioned some of those challenges, but how are they reacting and what do you see them doing in order to ensure their survival?
Well, I think that the message last year, and I think it carries into this year, is promotions. And it's hard now because if you are a retailer, it's costing you more money because tariffs are crazy. So depending on where you get your product, you're paying more money than you did before. And so you kind of have to raise your prices, and yet you're supposed to be offering promotions and discounts to get customers in. So you have to figure that out. What's the balance? You are gonna. I have a good friend who imports his product from China, and after the pandemic, he said, "Okay, we need to expand our source of suppliers," and he did. But he said nobody can do it like China can. Best factories, they understand, they're doing it. So I'm back to China factories. They charge me more. I charge my customers more, my end customers, and he's also a wholesaler. And I'm charging more to buy my product, and the retailers in Turner charging even more. And so you're going to raise your prices, but you're going to have to figure out which part of your merchandise, your inventory, you're going to discount or promote, and it's basically constant promotions. Otherwise, you're not going to get people in your store. So the question is, how do you communicate those promotions? What's your best marketing channel to do that?
I think I want to also note that even though what Riva said was relating to product-based businesses, this is hurting service businesses as well.
Absolutely.
There's unfortunately a trickle-up effect.
Yes. I mean, I was talking to my hairdresser, same thing, right? Service-based business, but they're paying more for their supplies. They're paying more to get the shampoo or the hair dye or whatever it is that they're doing. And so it's really hard all the way around for business owners right now. It's a challenging time. And so if you last year and the year before and the year before, the two top issues used to be, I can't find employees and I need help attracting customers. Nobody's really looking for employees right now. When you look at those numbers too, the job the job market is stagnant. I read something yesterday that it could get worse because companies are going to start to lay people off, in which case less money to spend, at businesses. But right now, the idea is it's not about finding employees. It's all about attracting customers, because that's what makes you the money, right? You need to bring your revenues in.
Well, then enter podcasting.
Exactly.
What a nice
Using
entree.
Yeah, exactly. Using podcasting as a marketing and promotional vehicle, I think where Steve and I are on that position. But I'm really curious from your perspective, and maybe Steve has some additional thoughts here as well, which is that given what you're seeing and thinking through all of the various channels that are out there. One of the things we talk about in the book, of course, is that podcasting is and can be a primary channel, and that there's a place for blogging, there's a place for video, there's a place for all of these different channels. And where do you see, when you're looking at the kind of the entire ecosystem of business owners, where do you see podcasting really fitting in for them? Do you see a particular types of industries that kind of lean into podcasting? Are you seeing more people approaching podcasting from a more video centric perspective? What are you seeing out there in the market?
Yes, I think there's an increase in podcasting. I think more are using video. My personal view is podcasting is a really good way, particularly with video. It's a good way to connect to your customer. A blog doesn't connect, right? A blog is a one-way communication. Somebody's reading something whenever, right? They could be distracted when they're reading it, but with a podcast, hearing a voice, some people are doing it where they're taking live questions, or you can react to that person. It personalizes it for your customer. And I think that really helps, because I think that we're still living in a kind of disconnected world. And so I think that the more that you can make that customer feel like you see them, the better off you're going to be creating a loyal bond between you and the customer.
What's been the reality, though, in terms with all these other challenges that businesses are facing, that they're actually going to take that time, take what money that might be needed to get these podcasts underway, whether it's audio, whether it's video? What's the reality that you're seeing in terms of the difficulty, or not difficulty, for these businesses to get underway with podcasting?
I think they don't know, right? They don't know. I think it's intimidating for a lot of people. They don't know what to do, how to do it, how to get started. And so I think a lot of people are I wish I could have a podcast, but don't know how to do it. I think your book, and I'm not just saying this, your guys' book is a fabulous way to get to understand what it takes, how to do it, how to get started in podcasting. I think that's really important. I think most people think it's very complicated and very like scary to do that, and they're like, I can't. And so I think it needs to there needs to be more talk about how good it is about reaching customers. But again, I've always said no marketing method should be on its own, right? You have to integrate all your marketing methods, strategies together, so you have one holistic marketing strategy to reach different people. Because some of your customers may not listen. Some will. Some you're going to reach one way. Some you're going to reach another way. Some you may reach one way and then bring them into your podcast. So it's not a like a one and done kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we have to kind of always consider is that podcasting itself is something that a lot of people feel like is going to be more difficult than it is. And the
Mhm.
people who think that it's not going to be as difficult are the ones that tend to have, like the greatest failure, I think. Maybe that's just me. Uh, but if you think about it from this perspective, if you are on the fence about starting a podcast and you have started a business, the business is the most difficult thing you're ever going to do.
That is very true.
So the podcast is really a walk in the park comparative to starting
Mhm.
and running a business, and it has work. I mean, it's like any other solid, consistent marketing channel. It requires work, and at the same time, though, I think that you've done something really, I think, well, and kind of what we talk about in the book, which is being a guest on a lot of podcasts,
Yes.
and it's a way to expose yourself without a lot of the work, and so. So talk to
Yeah.
us a little bit about that.
I think being a guest it's really a great way to spread yourself around, right? You can appear, locally in a place that is thousands of miles from where you are. And it's a way to kind of cater your message, if that's the kind of business you have, to a specific audience in a specific city. You can you can tailor it that way. I think it's really smart to market. If you are a business owner and you don't want to tackle podcasting yourself, I think being a guest is a really smart way to get started, to get comfortable. I was a journalism student. I was a broadcasting major. So talking has always come easily to me. Yep, yep, yep. But my social studies teacher in 7th grade called me motor mouth because I just kept talking. But it's some people are intimidated by, like, I'm talking to an audience or something, and you get to realize it's not. You're just talking to somebody asking you questions, and you just talk, and it's conversational. And I think that, again, that humanizes you. It makes you not a business owner. It makes you a person who happens to be selling whatever. And I think that really helps. One thing I was thinking about, though, is if you have, and not just retailers, if you're in an office building or on a main street or something, and you think this is too much for me, think about forming a group with your other local business owners, either by category, like of who you're selling to, like your end customer, or just in general about Main Street, and do it together, right? Do it as a group so you can talk to one another. You can fill the local residents in on what's going on downtown, what's going on in that city, what's going on in general. And that makes it a lot easier for you. Like, if you're intimidated about, what am I going to say, what am I going to ask, who am I going to talk to, you're just chatting with each other, and the audience is learning and getting to know all of you as a group. And I think that might be a good idea, a good way to get started.
Yeah, they're called affinity podcasts, and you're absolutely right, Riva. I have advocated so many main streets to do this, right? If the local EDC, the local Economic Development Authority, the local Small Business Development Center, they can aggregate, all the health and wellness businesses. You've got a
Mhm.
yoga studio, a gym, a Pilates teacher, a massage
Yes.
therapist. Bring them all together and do a health and wellness and beauty podcast for, you know,
Yes.
Tuscaloosa. What's the name of the state, Steve?
You mean Alabama?
Alabama, there we go. I don't know why I keep getting the state wrong, but that's why Steve is there for me to help me remember these things. But like you can do affinity podcasts, and that reduces the amount of work everybody needs to do, right? That means like if you have 5 or 6 people, that's 5 or 6 people that
Mhm.
you're rotating. Maybe that's a bigger network of people promoting the podcast. Like so many good things about that. That's a great point you've made.
And
Yeah,
you can share the budget, you can share the time commitment, you
exactly.
can share ideas in terms of
Ex
content. So yes, so I'm just wanted to add to that from that perspective.
Yeah, and it's not just the same type of business. Think about the target customer, right? If you're in a certain area, maybe there's a lot of young moms, right? So think about the businesses that they shop at, like maybe a toy store, maybe kids clothing, but they also go to the gym, they go to the hair salon, they go to the nail salon. And so you can target your podcast to helping them, and that's, again, I think in marketing, and podcasting, this is a good way that you can do that. The more you educate your customer, right? It's not about just saying, "Hey, we have 50% off this week, come on in." It's the more you can educate your customer and tell them something they don't know, or fill in something, or let them send you questions and answer them, the more of a loyal customer they're going to be.
Absolutely. And I wanted to get back to one thing you said a little bit earlier, Riva. Uh, and you mentioned a blog is really doesn't have that relationship factor necessarily that a podcast does. But one of the great things about podcasting is you can reach so many different channels. Your podcast can be audio, it could be video, but you could turn that into a blog. You could
Exactly.
turn that into an interview, kind of transcribe the interview, make that as another piece. There are so many different pieces that can reach so many different channels that, let's say, a blog itself cannot reach.
Right. You can use a lot of it on social media, right?
Mhm.
Depending on your social media of choice, make it, audio, make it little hits, make it little information. It's one of the things that I just started doing about a year ago, and it's really worked, is we have a weekly newsletter that goes out every Wednesday. And I post it and then it goes on my website on Mondays. But over the weekend, I posted in LinkedIn and I've I've gotten like 16, 1,800 subscribers just from doing that. Because again, the whole point of marketing, I want people to really understand this. The point of marketing is reaching as many people as you can. So when you like you said, you use one podcast and you can have 4 different ways or 5 different ways of reaching that market. That's going to make a lot of sense for you. It's going to be more efficient, time wise, money wise, and it just spreads the message. And that's the whole point. So you get to choose what message you want to spread, and then there's different ways to do it. But
Yeah,
I
we
want
we
to know.
could
Go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead, Reba, go ahead.
I was starting to say, journalist, I want to know when I get to flip the script and get to ask you questions.
Well,
Because,
this is that moment in time. I think it's time
Oh,
for
we're
us
there
to.
all we're there already.
We are there already.
yeah, and this is easy because this is the stuff you know. So, thinking about somebody who's thinking about a podcast, what makes a podcast worth the investment? It's not free to do it. So, why do you think it's worth doing?
You want me to take that first, Ray? So for
Go for
me,
it. Go for it. Yeah.
yeah, for me, I believe there are 4 different reasons why, as a small business, you should start a podcast. And much like when I mentioned, podcasting, you reach so many different channels. You have so many different channels as part of your investment. You have your digital marketing, your search engine optimization. Ray likes to say, people meet you before they meet you with your podcast. That's one way. Branding helps improve your branding aspect of it. You have thought leadership. That can be key in many ways. Not only can that be key for you and your business, but it also can translate to you as being a guest on other podcasts or other media
Mhm.
outlets, which further can promote your business. So think of it from that perspective and never be shy if somebody wants you to be on their podcast or interviewed by the local television station, newspaper, local blog, whatever it is. Never turn down those opportunities. The final thing for me is, and you mentioned it and you had alluded to this a little bit, it's that relationship building, that engagement with your audience, which is key. So those are four very easy ways that I believe, and I know Ray feels the same way, that it's worth the investment to start a podcast for your small business.
And I would say that the element that I would underscore from what Steve was saying was the people piece. I think I've already said this certainly in our first episode, but the relationships I've made just from podcasting, right? The opportunity to invite someone to a podcast so that you can have a conversation with them and build those relationships, or people that you've met along the way because you listened to their podcast. And that's happened here in this podcast series
Mhm.
itself. The relationships I've made over the many years now that I've been podcasting, I mean, they're genuinely wonderful for me. But
Mhm.
at the same time, they've been fantastic for the business. They've given me this outlet for being able to connect with people that I otherwise wouldn't have connected with had it not been for the opportunity to be on their podcast or to connect and have them on my podcast. I'm about to be on the podcast of a colleague of mine, and about the book. And we've been colleagues for many years, and it's just really wonderful to have that kind of reciprocity.
Mhm.
And it's a richer experience than a thing for my newsletter or that kind of thing. You know what I mean? There's just this deeper.
Right, because when you're on it, the host of that podcast is going to market because they're marketing their podcast. So you get to like ride the coattails of their marketing as well. So we talked about how many different, there's podcasts with video, podcasts without video. What is the minimum viable version that you guys think work?
I'm gonna let Steve answer this first, and then I'm gonna poke holes in it.
So to me, I think the minimum and maybe the easiest, and Ray and I probably have many disagreements over this, or maybe not, uh, a short series on a specific topic to me would be the minimum viable, rather than necessarily committing to, I'm going to do a podcast every week, or I'm going to do a podcast bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it is. That to me, you in many ways, that's kind of like testing the concept, seeing if you can come up with topics for, let's say, maybe it's a 6-episode series or an 8-episode series on a specific major topic and break it into kind of sub topics off of that. That's where I see it.
Yeah, and I would be a little bit different than Steve, only in the sense I would take it a step before that, which is we already talked about guesting. I would start with podcast guesting,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Okay.
right, and so we talk about that in the book, and I think it's really important for people to understand that if you start to be a guest on a podcast, you will figure out pretty quickly if this is your
Mhm.
medium, right? If you're really capable of presenting, and if you can't present well by voice alone, then you're gonna have a really tough time doing video. And that doesn't mean don't do it. It means that you need to practice these skills. You need to
Yeah.
hire someone like Steve who can help you be better on camera and behind the mic. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that I'm always hawking Steve. Everybody should hire Steve. Basically, is how I feel about it.
Boy, they better not listen to these podcasts then, Ray. These episodes. Whew,
No,
unedited,
no, but
raw.
but but people need to know that they need someone like Steve, someone who's a third party to help them really see how they present
Mhm.
poorly, how they present well, and to be able to build those skills. And being a guest on a podcast really helps that. And I think that's the minimum viable, right? Is being a guest on other people's podcasts.
So how do you find podcasts to be a guest on?
Yeah, so there's lots of ways in which you could do that. The first step is just to go out to podcast directories, go to Apple Podcasts, go to the various, podcast directories that are out there and just search for podcasts where your audience listens. So going back to what you were talking about, Riva, with regard to kind of the affinity podcast concept, don't necessarily go after a bunch of podcasts where all of your colleagues are listening. You don't want to be talking to your
Yeah.
colleagues or your competitors, right? You want to be talking to your audience, which are the people who are going to be potential buyers. And so you want to find folks who are going to be like you producing podcasts, who want to have you on because of your subject matter expertise, your thought leadership, or some other value that you're bringing to, you have a strong story. If you have a strong origin story, then that's really good to be able to go out there and present over and over and over again. You can't do it too much because what people don't realize is people curate their podcast feed. So you're not listening to all the podcasts on customer service, right? You're listening to probably one, right?
Right.
Unless you're in the industry. So it's very unlikely for someone to hear your podcast interview 5 times you saying the same thing. Not that you should be repetitive. You should bring some spice to how you explain things on occasion, unless you're like me, where I'm trying to educate people about things. So I do say the same things over and over again because I try to hammer it into them. But you can go on to several podcasts and you can go ahead and do that. So that's number one. You could look at podcast directories. Two is that there are services out there. There are literal businesses out there, like Podmatch and otherwise, that will go out there and connect you with hosts of podcasts. There are ones that will pitch you to podcasts that they know are in their database. And now we have AI. We have AI tools
Yeah.
that will go out there and do the searching for you and source a list of those podcasts and reach out to them in an automated fashion to do that.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
oh yeah. So there are some really sophisticated tools out there that have. I know several folks using them, and they're getting some level of success with them. So even though I think that they're a little bit less than perfect, they're gaining success. I got one actually the other day, and it was an introduction to being on. I run a podcast about productivity books, self improvement books, and it basically was like fill in the. You could tell where it filled in the blanks,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was all AI, right? So it was actually pretty good. It like knew enough about me to kind of whatever.
Mhm.
It sent out the email, and then I could see from the links that these were all AI generated tools.
Yeah.
So we have lots of those things. The final one is talk to your own network. There are probably people in your own satellite. Post on LinkedIn
Yeah.
and say, hey, listen, I'm looking to be on some podcasts to be a guest. Is anybody willing to be a taker?
Oh,
And
yeah.
lean into your network, lean into your spheres of influence to get folks to interview you.
So what mistakes do you see small business owners making when they enter this arena?
Oh, clear your afternoon. Clear your afternoon. Let's
Yeah, where do you want to start?
Steve, go for it. Go for
No,
it.
I'll just mention a couple because I know Ray, you have a bunch. To me, and when I work with a lot of when I do a lot of media training, I have to remind my clients you really need to serve your audience. Think about your audience, and that can be a big mistake that small businesses make. And you want to do a topic, you want to do an episode about something that you really love or you really feel is important, but it may not be the best topic that will serve your audience. And Ray is always accusing me of going back to lawnmowers. So, so let me give you an example here, just to make Ray annoyed.
These damn lawnmowers, Riva. These damn lawnmowers.
So let's say let's say you have you build lawnmowers and you're really excited about the blades and the blades you're so excited about the design about the blades that you want to do an episode about the blades and how different they are and how revolutionary they are, where all your audience really is going to care about is how do they save me time and money.
Right.
Two very different episodes. So think about it from that perspective. What serves your audience best? And I'll just leave it there, Ray, and you can go on a much more bigger laundry list.
No, I'll start with the number one thing that you want a podcast to be is consistent, and that's consistency in a number of different ways, right? Both releasing of episodes, but also the tone, right? Don't start your podcast with kind of a WWE style Royale announcements, and then the next episode be like a little, wallflower and be very quiet and meek, right? That's a brand disharmony that people will notice. And if they find that you're erratic, even to the effect that, some podcasts are really always doing interview style. And so they just do interviews and that's all they do. And then all of a sudden they stop and now they switch gears and now they're doing something very different. That's going to be disruptive for people in some way, shape, or form. I don't say don't do it. I'm just saying that you should be thinking strategically about the consistency of the brand message. And going back to brand message, I'll get there. But like consistency of really the style of the show that you're putting on, people get comfortable with what they're experiencing when they have you literally in their ears as a part of the routine of their days. I know that personally. I listen to lots of podcasts, as you can imagine. And when things change, even when, like one of the co-hosts, I listen to a podcast that has 3 co-hosts. And when one of them is missing, I still listen to it, sure, but it is not the same experience for me because I'm like, it's like missing one of your friends this week, right?
Yeah.
There's this parasocial relationship that you build, and it's like, wait, where is his voice? It's really weird to not have his voice, right? And it can be fun, just it's refreshing to get a little bit of a spice in all of it. But I know that I'm coming back to the podcast at some point in the future, and it's going to have the 3 of them talking again. So consistency is important in that. This also goes to the brand visuals. So consistency in the brand visuals. I see a lot of podcasts that get very kind of wayward in the way in which they have branded their podcasts very differently than the business. In essence, your podcast should be an extension of the business's branding. Don't reinvent the wheel. Extend the wheel you have invented, and that means that the podcast itself is gonna look very similar to the business. That may even double duty the logo that it does for my podcast. My business podcast is basically the business logo, and all of those things extend because I'm not trying to promote myself as a hobbyist or as an influencer. I'm promoting a business. And so
Right.
you want people to feel that level of Target, Walmart, McDonald's feel. I'm going to go here and it's going to be the same exact high quality experience I get everywhere else. And so those are the mistakes I see. I see the mistakes of people just inconsistency across all of those fields.
And that last thing you said is really important advice, not even just for podcasting. It's across your brand. Everything you do, your social media, your blogs, your website should reflect your core business, no matter what it is. And I think a lot of people say, oh, here's my chance to use bright colors. Well, if you don't use, you're trying to send a message about who you are and what you are. Okay, last question.
Oh, can I do one more thing? Can I do one more thing? Okay, so
of course, it's your podcast.
Well, we flipped the script, so I've given up control. The inmates are running the prison now. But the whole idea of promoting, you talked about being able to do promotions. And I think this is one of those key areas that once you start a podcast and now you have people listening, whether that's 10, 15, 20, 100, 500 people listening to your podcast, and you want to be able to invest in, communicate promotional campaigns, coupon codes, those kinds of things, you have to be really, really clear about how you're going to present those in the podcast. And I always think about it. I started doing this with all of my blogging clients way back in the day when I was doing a lot of content writing for my clients. I would always tell them, use the blog as a surface for your own ads, right? It's your blog. So advertise in it, right? And now you know the very clear difference between editorial and advertising, right? And the two don't have to touch each other, right? You can insert ads in your own blog posts. At the end of every blog post, you can have a call to action to your lead magnet. So you can do these very clear things. And we could do that now in the podcast as well. So you might start a podcast off and say, hi, I'm Sidney-Smith. This is my podcast. This is what we do, right? And by the way, if you start with us in January, here goes our deal that we have going on. Now you've gotten it out of the way. Go on with the rest of the show. Provide absolutely wonderful substantive value, and you've gotten both of those values to your audience. But make sure that you're doing it in a way that makes it very clear that this is a promotion. This is content, and people will be fine with it. A lot of people get kind of like, ooh, I don't know what to do about sales and advertising and promotion. And it's like, no. This is the whole point of you having the podcast, right? Don't try to pull the wool over these people's eyes. They're smart. They know, right?
And that's okay. People, they want to be marketed to, right? They want to know what the deal is, where I should go. think of it as, you're helping your customer by letting them know, hey, this is on a special, this is what's hot, this is tax time, you better get your act together. I think it's really important. Okay, last question. How do you manage your expectations? What do you're not going to go on your first podcast and attract 100,000 people. I mean, or, that's just crazy. So how do you temper, what do you expect in the first, let's say 90 days of your podcast?
I'll take this one, and then Steve, you can follow up with any other thoughts. So this is the way in which I have generally, and we didn't talk about this actually in the book, and so this is really good for folks to kind of understand, is that in that initial phase, very similar to starting a new social channel, starting a new blog, starting a new video channel, there is a level of advertising that needs to be done, along with basically socializing that new channel with the people in your network, right? So just like any other thing, you need to go out there and do what I call listening. So listening, speaking, and connecting, giving attention, getting attention, and then of course connecting people. And so this is the community model that I use in the book. And so the goal here is to go out there and do quite a bit of listening, giving other people attention. If you go out there and you start commenting on lots of other social channels, commenting on other people's posts that where your audience is already listening, now they're going to be able to find your podcast because they found you, and they're going to look you up because you're giving value to these other channels. Second is advertising. I think there's a real value to being able to go out there and put in a small advertising budget and being able to promote the podcast itself, right? So it seems really weird to promote the podcast to be able to promote the business, but there's a huge long-term advantage, because by promoting advertising that just directs people to products creates short-term discount buyers, right? Someone who promotes a podcast or a video channel to content creates a consultative sales environment in which you are actually promoting to people who are value buyers. And value buyers are the ones you want. You want someone who's going to care about you, they're going to keep caring about you, and they're going to keep buying from you. And that means that referral and repeat buyers are going to be the ones you want to really appeal to. And I think in that particular case, that's how you build that up. And that's where, you can go from 0 listeners to 100 to 200 to 500 pretty quickly if you take the friends and family, the F&F group, right? Find your friends and family, find that F&F group, and then do some strategic advertising. And that might be Meta ads, that might be Google ads, which includes YouTube and otherwise, and getting the word out there to people that the podcast exists. That's going to get you more exposure on the podcast directories and so on and so forth. Steve, did I miss anything?
No, you covered quite a bit, but I wanted to add, in that first 90 days, and maybe I think about this a little bit differently in terms of the preparation from the podcast part itself. In that first 90 days, I don't necessarily think that you have to have any episodes released. And I know that may sound counterintuitive, like, what's taking you so long? Why? However, hear me out, Ray. So in that period, because I like to think preparation is the key. It's also what I try to preach to those who are going to be guests on podcasts, how to be a good guest. We talk about that a little bit in the book, but from the podcast part of itself, in that first 90 days, you better make sure that you have your name, you have a format, you have who's going to host. You need all that down pat. Have several episode ideas from the content standpoint. And if you can, at least record your first test episode. Your first test episode doesn't necessarily have to air. It's you're testing the concept and see what you like, what you don't like. Maybe you need to redo that test episode, and you may need to do a couple before you're ready to actually have that first episode within that 90 days. So that's the kind of preparation that I'm talking about. And I know it sounds odd not to think, oh, I'm going to have at least 3-4 episodes in that first 90 days. Maybe it's not the case, and maybe it'll work better for you if you don't.
Everybody's going to hate their first episode. So
yeah.
That is
I do. I hate about like our first 20 episodes, right?
But you also have to get yourself familiar and comfortable, right?
Yes.
Because that's key. You want to be comfortable with what you're doing so you convey that to somebody else, that you're trusted. If you're not comfortable, you sound basically a lot of times not trustworthy. Like people go, well, what's wrong with that person? And then you're defeating your very own purpose. I said to a friend of mine, I love being a guest. I was co-hosting a podcast for a while, and it was the host, it was too much work, too much, so we stopped. But I love being a guest because I have no prep, right? That's the beauty of you just sit there and answer the things that because you're a guest, because of your whatever your expertise is. And think about that. I think business owners have more of a base of knowledge than they often think they do. They think maybe they just know about what it is that they sell or make or do. But you have a lot more to impart in terms of how you conduct business, about doing business in this town, about, changes in the town, about what you think, etc. So don't limit yourself to a very narrow field either.
And
Yeah,
I
I'm
would
always
add, I'm sorry, go
go
right.
ahead, Steve. Go ahead,
No, I
Steve.
was just going to say, as a media trainer, I would say, Rieva, prep is helpful. Knowing, what your purpose is on that particular podcast as a guest. So I would say and I do say to my clients, don't wing it. I know a lot of folks are worried about their authenticity, their spontaneity. I would say make sure you know your stuff before you go on an episode so that you can convey that authority, that knowledge, that presence that you want to have as a business owner. So keep that
Yeah.
in mind. I would always want people to know.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't mean to say that you just woo.
I didn't think you did, but I wanted to make it clear.
But there are some circumstances where there are, I mean, certainly sometimes journalists, and you can speak to this better than I can, will not provide you questions
Right.
beforehand.
Oh,
And
most
so,
often. Yeah.
right, exactly. So there is some level of, if you are going to be a guest on, say, like if the New York Times calls you and says, "I want to interview you," you need to do perhaps some different preparation, because you're just being tossed into a
Right.
sea of potential questions. And I know, take no offense, both of you, from this, but the journalist who is interviewing you is not your friend, right?
Right.
And so you need to be very careful about trade secrets. You need to be very careful about sharing too much, giving opinions that you don't need to be giving about and outside of your business purview. Like, there's a lot of things that I think
Yeah.
people miss because they don't prepare for the potential, not adversarial relationship, but certainly there's an interrogation happening, and you need to be able to present your business well. You need to be able to be a subject matter expert or a thought leader in that space, and you need to also do that without like beads of sweat coming down your face.
Yeah.
And that's all true. And I wanted to say this too, Ray. I think in one episode you accused the press. I think in an earlier episode you accused the press of being your enemy, and I said I was offended. They're not your enemy.
Ray.
They are not your enemy. And I realized in
true,
that
it's
moment,
true.
I said, Ray, and I just said, I'm offended, but really they're not your enemy. They're doing a job.
Yes.
Their
Yeah.
job is a different job than what you have.
Yes.
And obviously that can be where the conflict comes in. But remember, they're doing a job. You need to do your job as a guest, as one person being interviewed. But just remember, they're not your enemy. They're just
No, it
doing
was
their
tongue
job.
in cheek. It was
I
tongue in
know,
cheek.
but I was offended.
Sorry, Steve. I'm sorry.
It's important, if you're going to be a guest, to listen to past episodes of that podcast, because you want to know, what is the host like? What kind of questions do they get? What's the kind of the back and forth? Is it fun? Are you allowed to laugh? Is it really serious? That kind of thing. And that way that is prep. So I take back what I said about there's no prep.
And the funny thing is that what one person thinks is preparation is another person's like non-preparation, right? So that's what they're
Right.
going to do anyway. And so when people tell me like, "Are you going to prep for a show?" I would typically say, for some of them, no, but I'm actually, yes, of course I'm gonna listen to past episodes. Of course I'm
Yeah.
gonna, like, those are things that are like standard practice. So for me, preparation it has a higher threshold. And
Yeah.
so therefore there's all these things that fall underneath kind of the waterline that I'm just gonna do by nature. Like I would never go onto someone's podcast without having heard their podcast before. It's just not my nature.
Yeah.
One, I enjoy podcasts. So like you don't have to twist my arm to tell me to listen to more podcasts. But at the same time, like I want to know what the style of that person is. I'm going to go into this conversation, knowing more than I did before, and I want to be prepared in that sense. So I think just be mindful that preparation may sound different to different people, and for you, what we're saying is be prepared as much as you need to be to bring your best self to the table.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
All right.
Can I
Go
ask
ahead.
one more question?
Yeah, of course.
How much does it cost to get started? Like, what's a reasonable amount of money that you're going to have to invest in creating a podcast?
Yeah, I would say. Go ahead. Go ahead. Steve.
No, we could do this in parts. I was going to say, from an equipment standpoint, get a microphone. You could spend less than $100. Get headphones or earbuds, easily less than $100. You have your internet connection, your laptop or your PC, however you're recording. Editing software can be free. So the barrier, really at its basic minimum, is not that expensive. You need a podcast host, a site that hosts your files. I know there are free sites. We don't necessarily recommend free sites for that, but they can be as little as what, $10 a month, somewhere in that range.
$10 to $15 a month
10
is probably going to be a good range for there. Yeah, you're talking under $250 to really get started in a podcast, and it could be even less than that. I mean, I know I keep saying this, but I started my podcast with my iPhone. Went from my laptop to my iPhone because my iPhone had a better microphone, and I know that was like 08, 09, right? But things have changed a bit. But you can start pretty inexpensively. You can start with a very inexpensive microphone, a set of earbuds, and the laptop or computer you're already using. That can include your phone if necessary, and then, of course, as Steve noted, you probably have a website if you have a business, and you're going to just need to get a podcast media host in order to be able to host the files. And my only caveat or change to what I've been saying before, Steve and I very much believe that you should be paying for a media host that has all of the features. But I see a lot of people migrating to Substack because Substack has the feature to host a podcast. It's how we're actually hosting this particular podcast, just because we wanted to be able to have that email and audio feed kind of bound together. So kind of newsletter / podcast feed. And then, of course, man, I'm gonna say enemy again. Someone's gonna hate me, but I'm just gonna say the word enemy, and then I'm gonna give it a pause, a pregnant pause, and I'm gonna say there is this company called Spotify, and they are trying to kill the podcast. Right? They want to own media creation and content creators, and so they are willing to give away for free the hosting of both podcasts and video in the interest of potentially getting rid of that feed. Why? Because having a podcast feed, an RSS feed, allows for independent release. You're not locked into anyone by having an RSS feed. But if a company just by chance happens to control that large amount of consumption of an entire generation, right? We're probably seeing millennials, Gen Z, Gen A, all of them, Gen Alpha, whatever they call themselves now, they're all listening on Spotify, and that means that if they're listening to your podcast on that platform and all of their podcasts are being listened to on that platform, why do they care about a podcast feed? Why do they care about an RSS feed? Until they realize that they are controlled by this one particular company. And so I really fundamentally believe, and I think Steve is on the same page here, which is that podcasting is an independent media. Right? It is an independent media technology, and we should always have that because we don't want to lose that small d democratic ability to communicate with our audience directly. And so that would be my only kind of caveat there regarding some of those things.
Cool. I didn't know that. So thank you for educating me.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm actually very pleased that Google did not go that route. When they set up their podcasting, they are very clear that they were going to be accepting the podcast feed as RSS, and that they were also going to support RSS on the flip side of it. So they're very aware of what that really means to the community of
Mhm.
independent podcasters, but to the ecosystem, at large. I
Yeah.
think there's a real value to small business owners understanding that their voice needs to be able to. Not only be independent, but also uh, uh, maintain that independence
Yeah.
wherever they might take it. I don't care if you want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. You shouldn't be able to be censored,
Right.
by some large media conglomerate. And censor is not the right word, but filtered or what have you, algorithmically by some media company because they don't want your content, or they've just decided that they don't want to support your technology or whatever that might be. So yeah, okay. Any more questions for us?
No, I think that's it.
I Steve,
When we're off, I'll probably think of 10 more, but yeah.
of course, yeah. I think we are at the point where we can potentially do some key takeaways and see some key actions from our dialogue today. And so I'm kind of jumping ahead here, Steve, but
Mhm.
the goal here for us is to maybe what's one perhaps key takeaway and or small action that for you, Riva, you feel like people should be doing or taking as it relates to whether it's podcast marketing or just promoting their business in general. What's something that you feel like they should be doing today?
I think that it's still January, right? So I think you want to sit down and look at your year of marketing ahead. What do you think you're going to do? Where do you think you're going to do it? How much do you have to spend? And if podcasting is not part of that, if you haven't been doing it, insert it. It doesn't take a lot, like what you said, Ray, to start by being a guest. You don't have to invest in anything. You do. You have to go find the podcast that you would be a guest on and start exploring it that way. That would be, to me, the first thing that you should do. But like, if you're going to do that now, think about, okay, maybe can you launch in July? Like, think about where you can make that transition from being a guest to having your own podcast, or talk to, like, what you call the affinity podcasting. Talk to your fellow business owners in your area and see what you can get going. It's a good time to explore and understand what lies ahead.
How about you, Steve?
I kind of alluded to it earlier when I said, about the audience. And I'll repeat that again. Always think about your audience, no matter what it is. That's your content choices, your guest choices, stuff like that. Respect your audience's time. And, at least I believe if you respect their time, they're going to respect you. And hopefully that's going to end up leading to business for you down the road.
I will say that my key takeaway from this was what you said really at the top, Riva, which was around the importance of businesses to be aware of the trends that are affecting them right now and make decisions that are going to be able to be enduring, notwithstanding the pressures, the highs and lows. We're going to have recessions, we're going to have economic booms, we're going to have bubbles, we're going to have depressions. But if you can understand the trends and make good decisions that are going to be good for you today and for you in 10
Mhm.
years, then you're going to be on the right path. And I think that choosing a solid marketing channel, whether that be a blog, a podcast, a video channel, or what have you, remember they could be transformed into all of the other things pretty easily today with technology. Obviously, Steve and I promote podcasts because we think that it's one of the best ways to do it. But if you want to start a video channel, just know that that consistency is going to be there for you
Mhm.
by being understanding of the trends that are out there and what you're doing to basically be kind of what do you call it? Enduring. Just better capable of handling the stress of all of the ups and downs of your market. So that would be my key takeaway. And with that, that is bringing us to the end of our time together. I can't believe it. Time flies.
Yeah.
And but I wanted to thank you, Riva, for joining us here on the show today.
Oh, I had a great time. And My last piece of advice is people should buy your book. I do.
We didn't pay her to say that. Want to make that clear.
No, I'm serious. It was so in depth but so accessible. Like you weren't. It wasn't like jargon. It wasn't like ununderstandable. I just think if you're thinking about a podcast, buy your book. Buy their book.
And with that, everybody should go over to smallbusinesscurrents.com, sign up for the newsletter, and check out Rieva's work. And thank you again, Rieva Lesonsky from Small Business Currents. All right, Steve, we have our next episode. Well, this is our final episode in the series, technically, even though we closed out the series before. I'm going to go ahead and put you, Rieva, into the stream, so you hang tight with us. But Steve, we're done. We're done with this podcast series, and so folks are now kind of let go. They can go off and create their next podcast or their first podcast episode or be a guest on a podcast. Well, do you have any final thoughts for listeners who have been listening along with us?
Thank you. That's the first place to start is thank you. We appreciate it. And I think that, again, I keep getting back to the audience and that if you want to start a podcast, we've mentioned that the barriers don't have to be that expensive, but if you constantly think about your audience, at least you'll be making the right steps and heading in the right direction to having a podcast that people will care about and want to listen to and might ultimately become one of your customers, clients, or whatever it is that you can benefit from. And they ultimately can benefit from as well.
Fantastic. I will say underscore or underlining Steve's thanks and gratitude for everybody listening along, whether you're listening in real time or whether you were listening 3 years later. Welcome and hello and thank you. And the goal for us really is to make sure that people are putting out content into the world that is going to be useful and valuable and bringing that voice to value. And we want to make sure that voice and value is really primacy in our consideration of being able to promote your business. So we really appreciate you for going out there and doing what you do as a small business owner. I know it's not easy. It's tough work, and starting a podcast is also additional work, but we know that it'll be good for you. So good luck in your endeavors. Let Steve and I know about your podcast when you launch it. And of course, you can find all about us. You can go to podcastingforsmallbusiness.com. You can find the book. You can find our resources library and touch base with us.
Contact form. Yes. Contact.
Yes, you could touch base with us there as well. So for Steve Orr and myself, Ray Sidney-Smith, take care, everybody.